So, is The Boys going woke? That's kind of the topic of today's video, and I'll say from the off, I actually don't think it is. But I do think that there's some cause for concern. But I think, take a step back, and I think it's really important to note that it's satirical. Okay, now, this is... There tends to be a lot of people getting really worked up about it, and claiming woke, claiming, get woke, go broke, SJW, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not oblivious to the fact that I absolutely agree there are some concerning elements. One, namely this. The Boys showrunner, Erik Kripke, claims that the white dudes standing next to you are the most dangerous people. I would say that that is definitely cause for concern. You'd have to be an idiot not to think so. But I also think that, there are elements that point to it quite literally poking fun at everyone. And also how the showrunners versus the studio, so Amazon, I guess, would be the studio, are not necessarily aligned. I think the showrunners and their intent versus what actually gets put to film can differ. And although he's saying this, I do think that there's not necessarily going to be pushed out in terms of it being, front and center in The Boys as a series. And I think it's quite evident when you look at the fact that you'd see this and you'd go, oh, well, they're going to just do, diversity hires and things like that. And I would say, well, but they haven't. So, I can see that there's definitely an argument to be had for it, but I think it's important to kind of strip it back, and it's satire. So, the same argument could be had for The Hunt. That was released and teased, and everyone lost their minds about it, saying it was ripping on conservatives and things like that. But when it came out and you watched it, it was ripping on everyone. That's the thing about satire. No one is safe. It doesn't necessarily align politically. It is apolitical, and everyone is up for the jokes. And I also think Season 1 handled quite touchy subjects in a very, very well done way. So even if you would say that these themes could be crossed over to being and falling into that woke category, I think Season 1 taught us that even if there are themes that could go that way, they tend to be able to handle them in the best satirically minded fashion, i.e., Starlight and the Me Too issue. That's something that if you had heard it, right, you'd heard it before its release, and he said, Starlight, we're going to be championing and touching on Me Too. That's what we're going to be doing, and workplace harassment. You would probably groan and roll your eyes. And there'll be a lot of people go, no, I wouldn't. You absolutely would, because I've covered videos about other things like this, and that's the gut reaction. And it's a fair gut reaction, but then when you see it, they handled it in such a way that is not groan-worthy. So let's dive into it, and let's kind of explore what they've been saying, and sort of, come round to the conclusion of, have they gone woke, I guess. So the Boys showrunner Erik Kripke recently discussed the upcoming second season of the Amazon show based on Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson's comic series. Now, this was an interview over on ScreenRant. It's not there anymore. They've compiled it into... If I go to their interviews, it's not here, right? But if I go to their main page, what they have done is something that they call a ScreenRant original, which is... Well, apparently it's original, but it's literally just them just talking about crap. So I don't know quite what happened to the interview, because I wanted to find it to quote it directly and explore it, but it has gone, so apologies for that. But this article is linked down below. Now, Kripke was asked, in Season 2, there's the supervillain terrorists all over the world that have been activated by Homelander. However, you never really get the sense that they're more dangerous than their creators. Can you talk to me a little bit about that dynamic? Now, this is where I think we can start to fall into that cause for concern. But again, step back. I don't think it's that bad. Okay, so he answered with, yeah, it's a great question. We were really interested in exploring the idea of authority figures getting the public really riled up with xenophobia and racism. But ultimately, the most dangerous people are the white dudes standing next to you. We wanted to reflect that story. So the supervillains are, in a way, a misdirect. Now, I mean, he is saying yeah, white dudes are the most dangerous and they're standing next to you. He's saying because we wanted to reflect that story. But I also think ultimately how that has transpired and crossed over into the first season is fair. Like, there is none of that, is there? Really, let's be honest, because it's a pretty even cast between, you know, diversity people that are evil. I mean, A-Train smashed into the dude's girlfriend in literally the first episode. Boom, gone, and he's essentially a steroid abusing superhero. And then you have evil white Homelander, but then you also have goody two-shoes white dudes and goody two-shoes black dudes. So I think when we start to get riled up about this, I think just take a step back. It's not appeared yet. Just step back for 1 second. I think although he's saying this, I think there's enough weight there to say, well, actually, I've seen the trailers, and there's enough, you know, there's enough kind of other elements in there as well to say that it's absolutely fine. And I completely accept that there's definitely some, you know, some things that are being said that are, whoa, you'd look at it and go, God damn. But I don't think Amazon are that dumb. You know, you got to remember they've handled the Man in the High Castle, right? Something which, on paper, doesn't look like it could be made. You know, we're going to be talking about if Nazis had ruled the world. What? Like, on paper, that doesn't sound like it can be made, right? So it is interesting. Now, obviously, this article is speculated and just said, you know, as a reminder, the first is in The Boys, the Seven had Translucent, Black Noir, A-Train, Starlight, Queen Maeve, The Deep, and Homelander. It also goes on to say there were 3 white men on the team in Homelander, The Deep, and Translucent. Obviously, Translucent's gone. A-Train's black, and we don't know what race Black Noir is, as he never takes off his mask. Starlight and Queen Maeve are both white women. So when we start to talk about that, it starts to fall apart. It's the same kind of virtue signaling nonsense that these people, you know, do. I mean, Seth Rogen, for instance, recently said that he's going to be actively making less things with white people, whilst he has just released a film where he plays the two leads. I mean, it's quite literally just virtue signaling. That's all it is. It is just virtue signaling. Because everything that we've already seen tells us otherwise, right? And that's really important to know. And even if it wasn't, their ability to handle things is very, very good. Now, Kripke then claims that part of Season 2 was inspired by real-world events. And this, I just think it's that kind of PR, trying to get people to talk and things like that. So he said, we wrote it at the time of the travel ban. And if you remember, the caravan that were going to come over the border and rape all the white women, we were in that world, and the way that authority figures were drumming up fear in these outsiders was disgusting, frankly. And so we wanted to reflect that story, which is Vought and the superheroes in Stormfront are really drumming up quite a lot of fear about these supervillains, when in reality Homelander and Stormfront are the real threat. Now, that might actually be true, but if you're taking a stab at it from a satirical approach, that's perfectly fine. Because not only do you have that, and this is where people being fundamentalist right or fundamentalist left, just completely, satire just goes over your heads. It really, really does. Because you'd see that and go, well, that's terrible then, you know, to hell with the boys. And that's fine. But then also remember, Stormfront is quite literally a feminist white nationalist. She's a feminazi. I mean, that's brilliant. That's hilarious. That's very much poking fun at sort of left-wing ideology and also right-wing ideology, is it not? And this is where I start to say, well, you know, even if this was true, it actually doesn't matter at all. That doesn't bother me. Because again, they even it out. And they're also the ability to just handle things correctly has been shown. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be shown now, moving forward. It could be terrible, but we'll see. Now, he goes on and touches on Stormfront. He says, yeah, our version of Stormfront kind of evolves over the season, and I think the comic book's version of Stormfront, with again great respect to the comic, which I love, is a pretty straightforward character. The first lines out of his mouth are like, Schnell, he's pretty straight up just a full-on Nazi, and it's hard to do reveals with a guy like that, which makes sense. So basically, he's starting to say that yes, there is going to be white nationalism in the series, and who is it going to be? This feminist. She is a white nationalist. Then I said this when they announced that they were gender swapping Stormfront. I said, calm down. It sounds like they're going for a feminazi, and that's kind of what we're getting. And I think that's brilliant. I think that's really, really funny. And he says it here. He starts to confirm it. But where the idea emerged, and without spoiling too much, what I'll say is under the writer room mantra of bad for the world, good for the show, we're all news junkies and we tend to pay attention to things that are happening out there in the world. And how do we use our superheroes as a metaphor for that? And I am horrified and sad to report that there is a rise of white nationalism. Now, whether you believe that or not is besides the point really to what he's saying. So he continues further and says, and it's taking a very different form than what it took in the 40s. It takes a very social media savvy, trying to attract young men and women form. And so we got really interested in creating a character that could represent that for us. And so, as I would say, it's not the version in the book, but I would say they have the same rotten soul, right? Now, again, so definitely a white nationalist, though a Nazi, sort of. And then he says, first, Aya brings such a formidable intelligence and wit, and she's just so smart and sharp, and we really needed that. The goal was to create Homelander's worst nightmare, which is a woman who wasn't afraid of him and proceeds to steal his spotlight. And we've seen from the series trailers and the teasers and stuff, and also what was said in interviews, she's a feminist Nazi, feminist white nationalist, a feminazi. It's very, very satirically focused. You know, and then just says further, that's the worst thing that gaping black hole of insecurity would ever deal with. So that was the idea originally, or at the start, and why we gender flip the character from the book, who is a man. Sort of makes sense. And then she was our way to get into issues of white nationalism. Anyone who reads the book knows who this character really is, and we ultimately reveal it. She has a very hateful ideology, but we were really interested in modernising it and how it's sort of often expressed today. It's wrapped in a very savvy social media package, and a lot of these people come on as like disruptors. We're going to be free thinkers about our hateful ideology, and so they come off in a kind of insidious way because they're attractive to young people until you dig a little deeper and then you realise it's the same hate they've been peddling for 1,000 years. And we wanted to reflect that in the character. Now, this doesn't concern me too much, like at all, in fact, because I look at it like I do South Park, for instance, right? South Park, nothing is safe. Literally nothing is safe with South Park, right? Whether you like... South Park is just satirical. They've poked fun at Trump. They've poked fun at Hillary Clinton. Literally everyone they poke fun at. And you wouldn't say that they're politically, ideologically focused, would you? You'd just say, well, it's satire. No one is safe. But I think, unfortunately, The Boys has come out at a time where, you know, we are very hyper aware of this situation. So anything new without a storied history of just showing, you know, that it is satirical can often be lambasted as being woke. I really don't think this is woke, and I think everyone's concern is, somewhat justified, but I think take a step back and view it like you would South Park. I think it's just humour, satire. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's a little bit different, a little bit just a deep dive, I guess, on my thoughts on it all. I don't think it's going to be woke. I think it's going to be very, very funny, and I will review it. I didn't review Season 1 because I got to it late. I loved Season 1. I thought it was fantastic, so I will be looking forward to this one. So please do let me know your thoughts on this all down below in the comment section. As always, though, guys, have been Mr. H. Take care.